Yeah, the problem with the real is that, again, it's not as simple as it may appear. Right. I can give a simple definition, but as it is with all simple definitions, it means nothing. Mm-hmm. It would be that which resists symbolization. But again, this does not mean that there is some positive entity which resists symbolization, because basically nothing resists symbolization. Symbolization has a kind of inherent obstacle, is, as it were, caught in its own loop. So then I would immediately have to go into different modalities of the real. And the big message, of course, would have been that the Lacanian real is not this big traumatic real as some horrible thing which is too strong for us to confront directly, but that the Lacanian real is fundamentally a purely formal category. Like, it's not that imagine symbolic structure as a system or a network functioning. And the real is not something which intrudes from outside to prevent smooth functioning. It's just that something inherently goes wrong in the machine. And this idea that something from outside intervened is just kind of a secondary fantasy. So again, the point is that the notion of the real is a purely non-substantial formal notion. It's in a way nothing in itself. So to give an example, let's take class struggle or political left and right. Where do we have here the real? In the fact that you don't have a neutral definition of left and right. Every definition of the political opposition between left and right is already a leftist or a rightist. So there is no pure difference left and right, because every difference is already difference from left or right. But what is outside, so all that actually exists are leftist or rightist approaches. You never have, the difference is purely non-substantial. It's just an obstacle which is a kind of a meta-obstacle. It's an obstacle to its own formulation. It's not that we have the real which is then too strong and some obstacle prevents us contact with the real. The real is kind of a, how should I put it, obstacle to itself. In the sense that the real is not what we cannot touch, but it's at the same time the obstacle which prevents us to touch the real. It's in this sense a purely formal category. So this would be then another definition of the real. But again, if you put it directly in these terms, it means nothing. You know, that's the problem with Lacanian categories, that they are always at the same time meta-categories, which is why usually Lacanian definitions are tautological, starting with his most famous definition, signifier. Signifier is that which represents the subject for another signifier. How do you define that other signifier? It's circular. But they work, but I think they're in a way necessarily circular, because they are, how should I put it, in a way, the notion coincides with its opposite, in the sense of we don't have the real again and the obstacle, which makes real impossible. Real is the obstacle itself.
How unique were these concepts? I mean,
Sorry?
How unique are these concepts? I mean, did Lacan think these out of?
Okay, now we will have to go into history of philosophy to show. I think that here Lacan is simply, this is my reading, many people would not agree with it, Lacan is simply following a certain philosophical tradition, especially the one of Hegelian dialectics, where things function in the same way. I think the entire Hegelian dialectics works as the kind of a short circuit between level and meta-level, where you reapply a category onto itself and so on and so on. Now, where what appears as an obstacle turns out to be the positive condition and so on. No, because the basic paradox of the real is it's impossible in the sense that we cannot confront it. But if the obstacle goes out and we confront it, it's no longer real, you know. So the obstacle is the condition of possibility. How should I put it? If you take away the distortion, you lose the distorted thing itself. This would be maybe the best idea of the real, that imagine falsifying something through distortions. But imagine that these distortions retroactively create that which is falsified. So that if you erase distortions, you lose the distorted thing itself. This would be then the real. That X which exists only as an effect of its own distortions. But again, you see what's the problem, why I need examples? Because if you just say this, you understand it in a purely abstract way. But in a way, it means nothing.